Good evening, afternoon, or morning. It is Sunday, September 6th. It is 4 p.m. Pacific, and this is the Observation Lounge, Episode 5. My name is Charlie Plain, the Midnight Lich on the forums, and I'm the host of the show. With me today, starting on my far left, is Christopher. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Christopher, and I'm Smiley on the forums. First edition brand manager.
And Justin?
I'm Justin, Resistance Futile on the boards. Good to be here again.
Yep, but both returning guests, multiple guests here. Anyone who's watching and wants to join us, the URL is tinyurl.com/join episode 5, EP5. Or you can join us in the chat room. We'll take questions from the chat room as well. In fact, Faithful Reader just asked, will these be replacing the period of review? I'm being heckled from the gallery, just for the record. I'm at Dan's house. We're at the Continuing Community Warehouse. We're having a little gathering today, and all over here is Dan, Dan's daughter, Dan's wife, and Matt. Matt is actually being good and ignoring me, but Dan is heckling me. So if I now they're not being good. So. Yes, over there, everybody is heckling. Matt Kirk is in the corner. All right. All right. Faithful Reader is asking, will these be replacing the period of review, kind of like a rolling review? And the answer is no. We will be doing the period of review again in late October, early November. We're planning for it now. We're trying to make sure it's scheduled conveniently for as many people as possible. And there'll be more information about coming that soon. We're actually going to be doing it differently this year in that we're going to be putting out a very large survey beforehand so that you guys can give us direct feedback, and then we'll be going through the survey feedback on the show. So these will not be replacing the peer review. This will be a separate entity entirely, and I'm all out of camera. All right. So let's get started talking about the topics that we've been suggested. I mean, there are a number of people who said they may join us. They may wander in as we get going. But I have a list of topics that were submitted here. Starting with Worlds 2016. People want to know what we think the meta is going to be, especially for first edition. They want us to talk about this Kazon deck. And specifically, I got a comment from Iron Mike to say, talk about Kazon in 1E. They're a total negative player experience, and planning around their crazy power at high-level tournaments is just frustrating, as it locks out a lot of possible affiliations. So, as 1E brand manager and a 1E player, tell me what you guys think about Kazon and what we should do about it.
Well, Kazon is actually good for once. I don't know, but I think we have stuff in the works, but we are not as fast as we would like to, maybe.
Well, design is slow.
Yes.
If I wrote a card today to deal with a problem, the earliest that card could be put out would be the next expansion, which is several months away. So design can deal with problems and deal with them quite well, but it is not a fast process. No, but yeah, I mean, Kazon's never been good, but there is a card in crossover that will help. I wouldn't say it's definitive, but Justin, I know you've played Kazon, and I'd say it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that you might have a Kazon deck in your suitcase. What do you think about this deck?
Yes, it's powerful, but honestly, I think it is only a negative play experience to those Delta Quadrant affiliations. A Delta Quadrant deck sitting down with a Kazon, it's basically going to be over on my turn 2. But on the flip side of the Kazon, cards like Goddess of Empathy that really have never been used, cards like Fractal Encryption Code, rarely used, a new way to use Access Denied, because nobody used Access Denied except for the computer skill thing before it was fixed. So I think Kazon, you just have to the tools are there. The tools are printed to deal with it. Landed ships. You know, my game against Ryan Sutton in Orlando Masters was a pretty darn intense game. You know, he boot camped against the deck for probably 3 weeks, and he knew, you know, Paxton Wormhole, evade board vessel, landed ships. And there's so much tech that you can use against Kazon.
Not to mention, 3 copies of Quinn
Yeah.
go a long way. You know, you can avoid really let's be honest. I think the card that makes that deck as scary as it is outmatched. Because there's a lot of ways to minimize battle or deal with battle, but even if you're using the mission where only 1 ship can attack you, they can still fly over with 6 ships and outmatch you. So, outgunned. Sorry, outgunned, not outmatched. So I mean, but the point that Iron Mike made is I think the concerning one is that this deck being as good as it is means that there are certain choices you just can't make if you think that deck is coming to a tournament.
Wow.
So, well, I mean,
that's true.
Delta Quadrant affiliations can. I mean, Herogen can get around it. I mean, you've got strategic base. You've got, again, you have androids, or in this case, board to deal with fractal encryption code. So that's androids. I think what the problem is with the deck is it requires you to put in X cards. So if we want a tournament to be, you must put in X, Y, and Z if you think you're going to face Kazon, otherwise you're going to lose every game. Then that's the problem that we have to look at.
Well, there's a difference between the meta and what you're kind of talking about, which is a rock paper scissors type of scenario, or a strategy, an anti-strategy meta, which is bad. This was the big problem and the big argument about Sean Hawkins and Damaged Starfleet back in 2010 for TUI. The game or the original version of Legacy, which is the game was going to evolve into I play the thing, or I play the thing that beats the thing. And that's a very bad environment to be in. And I don't think we're at the point where it's you play Kazon or you play anti-Kazon. It's not that bad. But and a similar argument has been made for Quantum Incursions, that the existence of this Kazon deck and the existence of Quantum Incursions takes certain affiliations away from being an option, which is it's just kind of unfortunate. That's never really a situation you want to be in. I mean, there's always going to be ebb and flow of power, but you want most affiliations to be a choice. And if there are affiliations that don't have the weapons to deal with Kazon or don't have the skills they need to get past QI, that's a problem. The Quantum Incursions thing, I think, is a problem that design solves. Design comes and makes more AU people and more empathy people available to more affiliations, and that sort of fixes that problem. But the Kazon thing is, I think, a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So if you were gonna do something about the Kazon deck, what would you do?
Me?
Yeah.
I would use errata.
Well, what would you errata?
That's the question. I remember back in the days when we used to have the Voyager that could tag along the Kazon due to the Kazon collective. The emblem cards that they used. And then that went away, and then we made the Kazon Voyager. So it was even easier. So, well, maybe just say that the Kazon warship could just have like a single staffing ships in it or something like that. So you could only use like really small ships. Something like that. You can still play the darn deck, but you need more ships.
Yeah, I mean, I want Kazon to be playable and to be good. I just don't want them to be this dominant that they are.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, maybe errata. I mean, outgunned, like you said, I would agree. Outgunned is probably the biggest problem. Dealing with battle is easy, so make it to where outgunned is playable only on your turn, so that way your opponent has their turn to do their stuff. and to get back to their safe haven before they end their turn. If they stay out in the open or the dilemmas screw them in the open, then their ship's going to get outgunned on the opponent's turn. But taking that away, I think might help a little bit.
Yeah. Right now we're testing a lot of different questions, or at least we're discussing a couple of different versions that we could do with both the Kazon warship and the outgunned card at the moment. So we don't want to rush it too much either, because we don't want to create a card that will never be used again due to we have to nerf it so much that it goes away. It never.
Which has happened several times in our history. So.
Yes, I know. So we're trying not to do that again.
Well, tell us what you think about the Kazon deck in the forum thread or in the YouTube comments, and tell us what you think you would change if you were in charge. We'll keep the discussion going, and we'll see what happens at Worlds, and see how much Kazon makes an appearance or an impact. I have another topic here, which is we don't really have anybody from the OP team on here, but I'd love to hear everybody's opinions. Ryan Sutton sent in a question asking, what does it take to host a high-level event in your area, such as a Trek Masters or a Nationals? Justin, I know you'll be hosting U.S. Nationals here. Go ahead and tell us when that's going to be.
Yeah, it's October 16th, 17th, and 18th in Kent, just south of the airport. As far as getting a high-level event, just PM your Continental Coordinator. I started with a PM to Dave before Michael took over, and that went back and forth with Dave for about 2 months on particulars, and while he was talking with OP, and makes it happen. I'd say it takes at least 6 months prior to the year to get the communication started, because it takes time to find venues and finalize them, but it is pretty easy. If you want it, and I think that's where the community is at. If they have volunteers for these high-level events, why turn them down? Work with them to make it happen and successful.
There are a lot of reasons to have a high-level event somewhere. I mean, you have to factor in, like, you can have a very dedicated play group of volunteers that want to run a high-level event in, Piqua, Ohio, but if it's not easy to get there or cost-effective, it's not necessarily going to be a good choice. Going up to the Ozarks, not gonna be a great call, or the Yukon territories is never going to be easy to get to, no matter how many people are playing up there. Whereas somebody like Orlando or Seattle would have an advantage. And that's not to say if we had a large play group in Piqua or in the Yukon that we couldn't give them big events, but you have to factor in a lot of those travel issues as well. Smiley, Christopher, what would entice you to travel to a Trek Masters or a Nationals in another country or another part of your country?
Well, I usually run the Nationals here in Sweden, and we try to move them around. So we've been to Uppsala, we've been here in Stockholm, we've had them down in Linköping back in the Decipher days, because that was the center of Trek Sweden back in the days. And then we used to go to Jörn and Skogs down in Gothenburg a couple of times too. So we move around, and so we try to do it once a year, and we try to move it around so everybody can attend, so everybody don't have to travel as much. But usually I try to go to other worlds, but I usually end up having to work instead. So it's canceling my tickets and everything, but next year I will go to London. That's in the cards already. I've scheduled everything around it, so yeah, I should be able to go to London next year at least. I would have loved to go to Australia now, but it wasn't possible, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I would have loved to make it too, but I make very little money and have very little vacation, so it's
Oh,
not likely.
come to
Uh,
Sweden. We have 5 weeks of vacation each year.
yeah, 5 weeks in Sweden, guys. Don't you get like
That's
free
the
high-speed internet at birth or something too, and they just
Yes,
like
yes
show
we
up?
do.
And
Yes we do.
Sweden's the place to live. So, Justin, because everybody in the chat room, well, your local players are gently mocking you. Why don't you tell us exactly when and in which city the Nationals is going to be held? So,
So yeah, it's in Kent, Washington. That's about be specific, 10, 15 minutes south of SeaTac Airport. We will be able to get transportation involved. I am taking Friday off from work, and I will probably also be off Monday after for airport trips back. So don't worry about cars. Get a plane ticket, get a room, and have fun. The week of 16th, 17th, and 18th of October, 2 weeks after Worlds. So.
yep. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it up there, but I did have a brief conversation with my roommate Matt Kirk about it today. So you never know, miracle might happen. But
Nice.
he and I are trying to rent an apartment, and that's not cheap. That's gonna be a priority. So yeah, I mean, if you want to run a high level event, I'd say the number one thing you can do is talk to your continental coordinator and let them know. There are a limited number of high level events that we can run in a year, but if they don't know that you're interested, they'll never consider you. So send a message to your continental coordinator. If you're in Europe, that's Europe or Africa. That is Thomas Schneider, THSDH. For Australia, New Zealand, and Asia, it's Chompers, Steve Hartman. And North America, it's Michael Van Bremen, the Ninja Scott. And if in failing any of that, you can contact Stuvie Matthias, and he'll point you in the right place. So there's an interesting discussion about Kazon going on in the chat room. Just you can either avoid it or kind of accept that you're going to lose those games. And PFTI, our rules master, is speculating if it's an online-only type of threat where you have 2.5 hours to play your game, or if it's fast enough to be played, you know, on the main stage. I think that's an interesting discussion. I would love to hear everybody else's thoughts as we people watch this later, and post on the forums. Let us know what you think, because we always read that feedback regularly. So.
Yes we do.
Ryan Sutton was also asking about future locations for Trek Masters and Nationals in 2016, and I know that Michael is hard at work figuring those out, and the ones that are in the early part of 2016 we should be announcing shortly. I think we're kind of all hands and all eyes are on Worlds right now, but Worlds is at the end of the month, so I would expect shortly after that we'll have some announcements for you about the first few Masters and Nationals in 2016, and we are going to be working harder to be earlier and more consistent in our announcements moving forward. That is a top priority for us. We've done better this year than we've done in the past, but we can still do better. So that will be something to continue to talk about. So here's an interesting topic, Christopher, that you can talk a little bit about. I can talk a little bit about. Justin, you can give us your reactions as a player. Sexecutioner wants to know the future of block and what comes after the mirror universe block. So we don't want to talk too much about it because we haven't even gotten to the mirror universe block yet. But given that we had our first meeting about the block after this one this past weekend, so
Yes.
why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what's coming up?
Well, first of all, soon, really soon, we will enter the mirror universe, and that's going to be the next block. And everybody knows that, and everybody's looking forward to it. And I won't say when, because we can do that a little bit later in this discussion. But after that, we're going into the 22nd century, and we will see more of the Enterprise crew. We will see more Klingons, I guess, and we will see. Hopefully, I'm still
Well,
yes.
let's just say something that we haven't done in the continuing committee area yet.
Yes.
Let's keep it a little vague for now.
Yes,
Okay.
we do that. And the last thing that we will do is we will sprinkle in some non-aligned. Yeah.
So I will say this: that I will probably with Christopher's help write a. About 5 years ago, I wrote an article called "First Edition in the Future," where we introduced the concept of block and sort of outlined, in a general sense, what the next 3 years were going to be. I think that's a good thing, and I think
Yeah.
Christopher and I will work together to do that again.
Yeah.
So sometime soon you will get an article that explains what the next 3 years are going to be in a rough sense, give you an idea of what to expect,
Yes.
and the changes that we're making based on the survey that we ran. So we ran a long survey a few months ago about what people thought about block and whether we should continue it. And I imagine at some point we'll put all the results together so people can look at them. But
I'm almost done.
the majority of the opinion was that block is good, and by and large we should continue. But there was a strong demand for more non-block, either an occasional non-block expansion or an occasional or more non-block content in the expansions,
Yes.
which we are going to be doing. Both of those things, in fact. So
Yes.
you will see, as we move forward, more cards in the block like the Kazon Voyager. They will be coming that are sort of like, this is not really meant for a block deck. This is just a card that is meant for complete play.
Yes.
So also, the block themes are the first two blocks were all about a property logo.
Yes.
Which means that if you really weren't playing TNG or really weren't playing DS9, there was very little in there that appealed to you. The next several blocks are not that way. You'll be able to be much more loose and use more of the cards in your decks without having to commit to a property logo. So yeah, block 4 will be 22nd century themed.
Yes.
What do you think, Justin?
Starfleet's awesome. They need some help in OTF complete play. For block, obviously it's dependent, but for complete play, I think it'll be a nice addition. You don't see Starfleet really ever outside of those one-time achievement decks, and that's other pretty cool.
Amber Marketry is just saying she wants the DQ block, and I will say absolutely that will happen. There are some people in the design team that are more hating of the Delta Quadrant than others, but we have lots of people, and we're going to get to it eventually.
Yes.
No comment is to win, but I promise you it'll be done because we'd love to make it so that those affiliations are
Playable.
back on even keel. So
Yes.
so yeah, so that's what's coming immediately, and then look for an article soon, relatively, talking about what the next 3 years are going to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I know what 4, 5, and 6 are. I know that we haven't really talked about anything past that, except on a very high level. So. Cool. So that was a.
I have a document here mapping us out until I think it's 2020.
Yes.
Yes.
I know that there are some tentative 2E plans through 2020 as well. So
yes.
We're not going anywhere, folks. As long as you guys are out there to play the games, we are going to be here to support you.
Yes.
So. All right. That's a good transition, actually, to talk a little bit about crossover.
Yes.
Which I think I hinted at this pretty obliquely, or no, pretty openly, but we'll see. Is going live tonight.
Yes.
So if you're watching this live, you are less than 5 hours away from an announcement article and the first official previews, and that's going to be exciting. The crossover is the first set in the mirror block. It is the first time It's the second time we've triggered a rotation, but it is the first time we're having, a set of blocks designed to be a block rotate out,
Yes.
and another set rotate in. So we're excited to see what's going to happen here. It is 78 cards plus 81 in the supplemental file. So you'll be getting 159 high resolution images in just a few weeks to add to your decks. And I'm pretty proud of this expansion because the team that I had, so all this is going up again at midnight, but the team was myself and Thomas Weinberg, Exxon, and James Monsabroten, Orban, who was the Make It So 2013 winner. And he's really knocked it out of the park. He's really brought it his A game. Thomas is an outstanding designer. He loves the mirror quadrant. He's leading set 2, which is one of the reasons we wanted him on set 1. So to give us that continuity. It's going to be awesome. There's some really crazily powerful stuff in this set. I have a spoiler as requested, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that up now. And Justin,
you're changing my schedule now, aren't you?
No. This is one of the cards. It's an early spoiler for the people watching the show because it will not be a spoiler. It's in the article tonight.
Good.
It's only a spoiler for those of you watching live or in the next 4.5 hours. So, Justin, tell me what you think about this card. I'll read it for everybody. This is a dual dilemma, a space or planet dilemma, called Rules of Obedience. It says, personnel with highest integrity or fewest skill dot icons is killed, opponent's choice. To get past requires geology and 2 honor, or 2 security and 2 treachery, or smiley.
Yay!
Not that smiley.
Damn.
Well, Justin, you haven't seen this before, so tell us what you think.
It's definitely got some nice anti-Bajoran hate going on because Bajorans are pretty powerful right now. I'll be able to kill, that Tui back into Boreal potentially, or Baka, or Shakar, one of those. Shakar being an obvious choice with Geo and security, but the wall situation probably not too big a deal there. With Bajor, with the Mirror Quadrant, as far as I know, I think there's only 3 people with Geo, 3 or 4 in the Mirror Quadrant, unless there's more in crossover. There's definitely a
I will say this: crossover is drastically changing what you know about the Mirror Quadrant. So,
I think it's definitely a good wall. I mean, any choice kills to be able to look at the opponent's crew.
Well, and it's a guaranteed kill too, right? It's a kill before the wall, so it guarantees that somebody dies, and then if you happen to not pass the wall, it goes back under and kills somebody again. So, I mean, it's thematically, it's easier to pass in the Mirror Quadrant because you can use Smiley, But there, you can set this up with Forsaken or any number of other filters. I think we based it on Volcanic Eruption, maybe. I know there's a dilemma that does something similar to this, where it's kill the highest cunning or lowest
land deal.
Land deal. Yeah. The wall might be a little easier, but it is dual, so you can use it at more missions. So Rules of Obedience, the lore. Overseer Odo's strict enforcement of order in the ore processing unit made life dangerous for any slave that stepped out of line. And 14V is the number. So I want to see some speculative card lists here soon.
I've tried to get people to start the speculative card list before, but nothing so far.
So crossover, including Rules of Obedience, will be released shortly, but you will start seeing previews tonight.
Yes. So. Unfortunately, you won't be able to use this during Worlds.
Correct. Crossover will not be legal for Worlds, but it'll be out then, so you'll be able to talk about it and look at the stuff. So, and I guarantee you, there is more Geo people in the expansion, other than just the ones that are out there now. And I seem to have lost my camera. Not that anybody needs to see me. There we go. I'm back. All right. Yes, it's a variant on Hanonian land deal. Laytalk in the chat room said that, as we discussed. So it is a good dilemma. So if you guys have any, Smiley, I mean, you've overseen crossover kind of start to finish. What do you think about it? So.
I want to use it I want to put it in one of my decks because I think it can be used really well with other combinations of cards, and as it always is when new cards arrive, it's, you know, you take people are not used to all the new stuff, so everything will hit just more or less at least once before everybody understands the new meta that a release actually makes. So I don't know, but more or less I'm looking forward to playing with these cards with all the beautiful imagery that art has developed, because during the development we've played with them with just a blank white space where the image has been, and usually names that has no recollection of what they actually are named right now when the set releases. So it will be fun to actually use the cards as they as they are supposed to be looking at when released.
Faithful Reader asks, will there be more designer continuity going forward? I assume you're talking about Thomas leading set 2, working on set 1. We're going to try to do stuff like that when and where we can.
If possible.
Like, for example, I said we had our first Block 4 meeting. It was the brand manager and the 3 lead designers of the 3 sets in Block 4. They're probably not going to be on each other's teams, but we're going to be constantly, like, we have a forum that's just for the block and block issues, and then there's a forum for each project. And each project is going to have their own team of designers, and then there will be communication between all the teams and between internal to the project and then amongst the block. So we're trying very hard to be overlapping where possible. Thomas had, this was the Project Vaughn, which is coming next, is Thomas's first lead, so we wanted him to work with an experienced leader first, and he really likes the Mirror Quadrant. It's like one of his favorite things, so we wanted to make sure that he's one of the most knowledgeable people we had, so it made sense for him to play double duty. Although I think he underestimated how much work it is, so
yes.
he's going to be taking a deserved break, I think, shortly after. But
yeah,
it's nice. We're going to have 4 people capable of leading sets on the Winnie side soon, which is awesome, because it basically means every 3 years you'll do 2 instead of right now, where it was just Dan and I passing them back and forth. You're going to get more voices and more perspectives coming through in your set designs, which is always good for everybody. So.
And I usually attend most meetings, so whenever I see something that another design team needs to know, I usually pass on the information.
Yeah, and set. We're on the 4 set, starting with Sloan, which is the third set of this block. We're on the 4 designer paradigm for 1E now too, which means we're going to be bringing in a rotating 4th person from set to set to bring in even more different voices and more different perspectives. So.
Yes.
Cool. All right, I got a long question here from Faithful Reader I'm going to read. It's mostly directed to me, but I'd love to hear other people's thoughts. And then I think we're going to wrap this one up early, so if anybody else in the chat room has other questions, I'd love to answer them for you. But I'm going to read his comment verbatim here. Charlie, we've got crossover coming up. It's not a big stretch to assume that there won't be a lot of non-mirror stuff in this set, particularly with the nouns. Yet the most recent expansion for 2E dealt with the Delta Quadrant, essentially. Contrast this with Emissary and Return to Grace, which dealt with almost the entirely identical subject matter, as did the Gamma Quadrant and Strange Bedfellows. As someone kind of sort of involved with all matters of design, is it easier or harder when there is this overlap? What helps you to keep each version straight? How would you compare and contrast something with a huge overlap and something with a small overlap? TLDR, how have you not gone insane? I have not gone insane that I'm aware of, because I have a lot of caffeine and I have a lot of very talented people that work very hard to keep me from going insane. And all deserve much accolades and much thanks. So the coincidental themes between 1E and 2E over the last couple of years was exactly coincidental. I mean, Set 2 was planned to be the DS9 block before we even really started Phase 2 design. And for Phase 2 design, we just kind of chose the 6 affiliations that had sort of never, ever really been high-level tournament caliber to start out with. I actually kind of think it was harder for me doing those at the same time, keeping track of, like, wait, well, what did we do in 2E? What did we do in 1E? You know, you'd have to switch hats. It can be tough sometimes. I mean, I think the busiest I've ever been, I had 5 expansions running at the same time. I don't ever really want to do that again. It's surprisingly easy to switch between 1E Think and 2E Think, but when you're doing the same source material at the same time, that gets super confusing because you don't remember, well, what story we were using for this card or what story we were using for that card. And it's just, so I think it was easier for me to deal with lower decks for 2E and crossover for 1E than it was for me to do, say, Emissary and Strange Bedfellows or Emissary and Return to Grace at the same time. The advantage of being the lead designer is, and this is a secret that they don't tell you, is that the lead designer does probably the least actually amount of designing. The lead designer just kind of like adjudicates meetings and leads forum posts and makes some decisions. Very rarely do you actually write cards, because you let your design team do most of that. So I've had really good design teams for Emissary, Crossover, and all of the Phase 2 projects I've run. Kevin, John, Mark, Matt, a bunch of people. I know I forgot some, and I'm sorry. But having a really good staff makes it easier to manage those workloads. So, and this is one of the reasons we've been training up lead designers on both sides, so I don't have to do this as much anymore. I think by the end of next year we'll have 3 designers, 3 leads in rotation on 2E and 4 leads in rotation on 1E, which will be much less work for me. I'm looking forward to it.
There was a question, was there anything in crossover put in specifically because TNG is rotating out?
We did most of that in Homefront 6. Like the stuff that we needed to keep or replace kind of went into Homefront 6. We definitely took the chance to create a different theme, which you'll read more about in the announcement article and see through the spoilers. But like, there's a distinctly, it's a death theme through the mirror block, like where death matters, and there's a lot more death than we had in the TNG block. So it wasn't that it was like, this specific card is leaving, let's bring this specific card in to replace it, kind of like Magic does with their blocks. But we definitely took the opportunity to do some different stuff because we knew that TNG was rotating out.
And on another note about having a good, what you need to do when you design. Nowadays, you don't even have to remember all the dates, because I will be on the ones actually doing the lead for the design to deliver to whomever they need to deliver to afterwards.
Mogor asked a question. What opportunities are you creating for folks who play the game to work in design? It feels to a few folks that the design side / rule side is a bit light on those who play the game heavily. I'm not sure. I don't necessarily believe that criticism is an accurate one. I mean, I understand it's just an opinion. But we have 2 world champions on the 1E side. We've had at least one world champion design on the 2E side. We have people who play twice a month. We have people who play once a month. We have people who play less than that, and there are some people on the design and the rules team who don't play as often as a lot of people do. But we are always looking for opportunities to bring new people in. This is something we've been talking about internally. We may do another Make It So. There's been conversations about that. We may do something analogous to Make It So without the workload on the back end. And I would say that the number one thing that we've done is we created the 4th slot on design teams. That can be anybody. It can be somebody from the rules team. It can be somebody from the creatives team. It can be a high-level player. I'll give you an example. I'm co-leading a future 2E set with a new lead designer. We made a rule that before you lead your own set, you lead it with somebody. So like the next 2E set that's coming out was co-led by Tyler and myself, and Tyler did all of the work, but I was just there as like a backup or to answer his questions or to teach him the things that he needs to know. So that now that has happened, Tyler is going to be leading the set after that.
You were holding his hand.
Not so much. It was more that I was there as a backup. It was more of a, when you go to a restaurant and there's the trainee and then there's the guy standing next to the trainee, but the trainee clearly knows what they're doing. That's where we were at. And I'm doing that for a future 2E set, and we sort of realized that the team that we had put together didn't have a high-level player on it. So we were actually, the first thing we did was we went to the list of high-level players and started looking through the decks that they've been playing to see if any of them fit into sort of the themes that we were talking about. And so that, I mean, if the design team thinks that bringing in a high-level player will be valuable to the design, that's what we're going to do. And one of the secret advantages of the 4th designer is if the person turns out to be a really good designer, we can keep them on the team. If they turn out to be, not so good, the deal when they come in as an intern is you do one set. So
Yes.
If we get an intern that is not good or just doesn't have a passion for design, we don't have to bring them back, and they contributed and made a cool set. If we bring somebody in and they're fantastic, we have the option to sort of hire them on the spot. And we are going to be doing some stuff to bring more community voices into design too, especially on the 2E side where our roster is a little light. I'm not sure what you mean with that statement, Mogor. You say this is more focused on the 2E side. There is a very distinct lack of action in regards to anything that doesn't personally impact the 2E design rule staff. I'm not sure what your point is there. I'm not sure I understand what your comment is. Yes, faithful reader, we brought Andreas Rhinelander on board to design Ducat on the boards to work on the Gamma Quadrant, which was the Dominion set because he's probably the foremost expert on the Dominion. It's a logical maneuver. That's exactly the type of thing we would do with the fourth slot. If there was somebody in the community that knew Starfleet like Ducat knew Dominion, then we would have brought them on for. We may still yet bring somebody on for Sloan Courage, Project Courage, which is the Starfleet set, Block 4. So, and again, we may do Make It So's. We haven't really ruled out doing a Will of the Collective again. We haven't terribly loved them, but we might do something like that. And I've actually been working on a project, an article. We have an internal 1E board which we just started using for all the different 1E departments. I've been writing an article for them that's like, how do I get on the design team? And I may massage that a little bit and actually turn it into an article. To be like, I want to be a designer. How do I do it? And give you tips and tricks things that we're looking for. So there's no. I mean, I see some people throwing around a conspiracy word, and I don't. There is no conspiracy. Of course, if there was, we would deny it, but there isn't. I promise. I mean, it's Dan's yelling from the other room that there is a conspiracy. So don't believe me. So,
fantastic.
There was a question since it's been mainly 1E for the show so far today. For 2E, what's the thought process going when creating new and more powerful cards that don't end up making the turns take longer and longer, as we're seeing 2E turns to start to take longer and longer?
I'm not seeing that anywhere. But
Oh, somebody asked me the question.
okay. What's the question again? Why are we making cards that take
So,
longer?
powerful cards that don't end up making turns take longer and longer. Like people are noticing turns, and I've noticed it too playing 2E that turns are starting to take longer, not just the mission attempt turns, but doing other things, orders and whatnot, similar to now 1E.
Well, there's a certain amount of that comes with releasing new cards. When you play after new cards come out, you have to learn what they do. I would argue that something like Crippling Strike is a card that makes turns shorter, because if they Crippling Strike you and you can't deal with it, your turn is over. You don't. But we are sensitive to the fact that we, on the whole, haven't pushed speed as much as we should have, and that's we're going to be turning that up, turning our eyes into doing that more moving forward. Like I had a 45-minute conversation with Tyler today, and he and I agreed that one of the decks he's working on for his Project Crichton, which is not the one that I led with him, but the one he's leading by himself, should be faster than he was planning on it being. So I mean, we're talking about finding ways to make things faster, to generally speed the game up. And Amber makes a great point in the chat room, where she says a lot of how long turns take depend on the person and the deck. So, I mean, Fritzinger says a long turn is mostly reference to Homeward Bound, and that is certainly when you can unstop all of your people and attempt again. That is certainly more time going into a player's turn, but that's not new. That's been, I mean, have you ever played against a board player that uses 3 annexation drones and 3 outlet costs in one turn and then comes over and assimilates all your people? Or have you played against a Ferengi deck that spends 44 counters in one turn and then takes a double turn? Or have you played against a 1E deck that takes a double turn?
Oregon.
So, and as Amber points out, if you're playing something new, it takes a while. It seems that Mogor is unhappy with errata and how they are not errata-ing cards that he and his playgroup feel are counterintuitive. I know that the errata team works very hard to keep an eye on things. If you out there have a problem with a card, send your notes to the leader of the errata team. The leader of the errata team right now is Josh Sheets, Prowler Durden. If he's not responding to you, then let me know. There are always going to be people that want more errata done than is happening, and there are going to be people that want less errata done than is happening, and it is impossible to please everyone. So it's about using errata to create the best play environment possible. So.
Yes.
Alrighty.
Do you have? Is there any the next 2E set? When is that's good for release before Christmas or?
Oh yeah, I believe end of October, start of November is where we're looking right now. Remember, the plan is every 4 months. So shortly after we get crossover out the door, we'll turn our attention back to 2E.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for joining me. We've had a lot of viewers for this episode, which is awesome. The episode will be live on YouTube. We'll have links on the forums. I will add a link to the video, to the comments, and to the forums for the survey for episode 6. I think we'll do episode 6 right after Worlds, so we'll probably look at early October, and I promise I will pick a European-friendly time, because I failed to do so this time, so we can get a lot of our European guests on. Now, not everybody's as crazy as you, Christopher. So.
No, I know. I sort of don't need sleep.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching. Those of you watching live and those of you watching later, go to the Continuing Committee website, trekcc.org, and join the discussion on the forums. Vote for episode 6, and we will see you later. And the Observation Lounge is now closed.